Hi, everyone. I'm here to discuss the different parametric methods. So to recall, when do we use parametric methods? Okay, so we use these statistical methods or statistical tools if our data is normally distributed and if our variables or data are either interval or ratio. Okay, so looking at these parametric methods, we have 9, but we actually have 3 parametric methods. I know you have Z-test, T-test, and F-test. Under Z-test, we have 3 cases, the Z-test one sample, okay, Z-test one proportion, and Z-test two proportions. Under T-test, we have T-test one sample, T-test independent, T-test dependent. Under F-test or analysis of variance, we actually have 3. One is one factor ANOVA one-way. Another is ANOVA one factor ANOVA two-way, which is not included here, and two factor ANOVA. Okay, so let's start with Z-test one sample. Okay, so we will be doing the computation with the aid of this software, SSB. Okay, so let's start with your Z-test one sample. Z-test one sample is a test used to determine difference between the population mean and the sample mean. So this is actually applied for one group data or test on one mean. Okay, so what are the assumptions under this test? Letter A, population is normally distributed, and letter B, population standard deviation is known. So to add another assumption, okay, so usually in applying Z-test one sample size is at least 30. Okay, so less than 30, we apply another other test. We actually apply Ttest one sample. Okay, so how do we use this software in analyzing, in getting the values for Z-test one sample? Okay, so let's have this problem. In a certain university, the results of the recent teacher's licensure exam among their graduates revealed an average grade of 80 with a standard deviation of 7. Okay, analyzing this first statement, your 80 here is your population mean, and your 7 here is your population standard deviation. Take note, we have already satisfied this assumption, which is population standard deviation is known. Okay, let's continue. With the aim to improve the performance of the next batch of graduates, their dean decided to provide them enrichment activities and extensive reviews. A sample of 25 students from the new batch was asked to take a mock exam. The results gave an average of 92. Can it be concluded that there is a significant increase in the performance of the new batch of students? Test or use alpha 0.05. Okay, so let's go back to the problem. Your 92 here is your sample mean. So we want to determine, is there a significant difference between the population mean of 80 with the sample mean of 90? Your sample size here is 25. So you will notice na one of our assumptions is the sample size should be at least 30. But take note of this conjunction. The assumptions or criteria to be used in applying Z-test one sample is population standard deviation is known or sample size is at least 30. So with the conjunction or, that means you only have to satisfy one. Okay, one of the conditions. So we already satisfied the first one. So okay lang po kahit ang sample size is less than 30 kasi given naman ang population standard deviation. So isa lang po dito ang kailangan natin ma-satisfy. Okay, so how do we analyze this problem using the software? Okay, so we click parametric. Okay, and then Z-test one sample. Okay, if you look at the interface of Z-test, the white area here is where we put the raw data. But since we don't have the raw data, we just put here the summarized value of the sample mean. Okay, dito naman sa white area sa lower right, the sample size naka-default po siya sa 10. Okay, naka-default sa 10. This one is your population mean, and this one is your population standard deviation. Okay, so let's input now the values. Okay, so first is you have 25. Okay, sample size. Enter natin. Okay, population mean is 80 with a standard deviation of 7. Okay, and then your sample mean is 92. Okay, wala namang given na sample standard deviation, so we leave that blank. Okay? Okay, ang Z-test po dito sa Simplified Statistics for Beginners or SSB, naka-default po siya sa critical value na 1.64. So if we recall, 1.64 is the critical or tabulated value if you have a two-tailed test. Okay? Okay, so let's let's click compute and then decision. Ayan. Okay. So ibig sabihin your Z value or your computed value is 8.57. And dito po sa problem, we have a two-tailed test. Okay? So given this alternative hypothesis. Kasi sabi sa conclusion, sa problem, can it be concluded that there is a significant increase? Okay, so this is actually your alternative hypothesis. Okay? Ayan. So given your HO, and then this one is your HA. HO, there's no change in the performance, or the teacher's licensure exam average grade is not different from 80. And then alternative would be there is an improvement. Kasi yung increase niya implies improvement. Or you can state your alternative as the teacher's licensure exam average grade is higher than 80. Okay, so with the computed value, we have 8.57. So since one tailed test po ito, our tabular or critical value is 1.64. So obviously, okay, Z value is greater than your tabulated value. Okay, so again po naka-default ito sa 1.64 na tabulated. So we have reject HO. Ayan. And then just write the corresponding conclusion for that. So at 5% level of significance, it can be concluded that there is a significant improvement in the performance of the new batch of students. The average grade in the teacher's licensure exam is significantly higher than 80. Okay? So that's Ztest One Sample. Okay, let's go to Ttest One Sample naman. Okay, so sa Ttest One Sample, baguhin ko na to muna. Okay, so there are two assumptions or criteria that we need to satisfy. Okay, so I'll restate this one kasi mas maiintindihan natin pag ito yung given. Is known. Okay, so these are the two criteria that we need to satisfy. Okay, first is, okay, dapat given ang sample standard deviation. Okay, this is sample standard deviation and sample size is less than 30. Okay, take note of the conjunction na end. So you have to satisfy these two. Okay, and of course, one of the assumptions would be data should be normally distributed. Okay, so the problem is given as the mean balance of all checking accounts at the local bank as of December 2012 was 8,500. Okay, so this is your population mean. Okay, sige, open na natin yung parametric and then Ttest One Sample. So pwede na natin dito ipasok. Okay, so you have 25 samples and then your population mean is 8,500. Okay, take note, wala ditong nakalagay na cell for population standard deviation kasi nga we're using Ttest One Sample. The data given is your sample standard deviation. Okay, let's continue. A random sample of 25 checking accounts taken recently from this bank gave a mean balance of 7,750. So we put here your sample mean and then with a standard deviation of about 1,600. Ayan. Okay, so take note sa Ttest class, pwede nating baguhin yun alpha and then if it's one-tailed or two-tailed. Okay, sabi dito, use the 1% significant level. Can you conclude that the mean balance of such accounts has decreased during the recent period? Okay, so referring to this statement, okay, we can say that you have a two-tailed test at 1%. So hanapin natin yung 1%, 0.01, one-tailed test pala. Okay, 0.01 and then one-tailed test. Okay, and then click compute, tapos decision. Okay, so very fast. Meron na tayong computed, critical, and then your conclusion, accept HO. Okay. So, given that, you'll have this, the mean balance of checking accounts, that this is your HO, the mean balance of checking accounts is 8,500, or the mean has not increased. Alternative is the mean balance of checking accounts is less than 8,500, thus the mean balance has decreased. Okay, so given this, ito po yung computed sa critical natin. Okay, ito po yung sinasabi ko. If you're using the SSB or software, you don't need to show here the manual computation or the solution for the manual computation. Just indicate here the computed and critical that you obtained from your software. Okay? So what will be our conclusion pag accept HO? So at 1% level of significance, we conclude that the mean balance of checking accounts is 8,500 or the mean balance has not decreased. Okay, so hindi significant yung pag-decrease. Okay, so that will be all for now. We have your Ztest One Sample and Ttest One Sample. Ayan. Okay? So to recall again, ayan. So ginagamit natin ang Ztest One Sample if the population standard deviation is given, okay? Or sample size is at least 30. Okay? And then Ttest One Sample, population standard deviation is given. Instead, okay, it's the sample standard deviation. Sample standard deviation is given. Okay, and sample size is less than 30. Okay. Okay, so take note of this of the assumptions or the criteria. So ulitin lang natin, Ztest One Sample is used if your population standard deviation is given or sample size is at least 30. Again, you have to satisfy only one of the two conditions here. Whereas Ttest One Sample, population standard deviation is not given. Instead, sample standard deviation is given and sample size is less than 30. Okay, with this conjunction, that means we have to satisfy these two. Dapat given ang sample standard deviation and sample size is less than 30. Okay, so I hope you understand. You're able to understand the difference between Ztest One Sample and Ttest One Sample.